The desperate call. The day the stars went dark. Ambassador Zarathylik stood before the massive viewing screen in the Corvini High Command, watching another star system die. The ancient space station orbited the gas giant Corvex Prime, home to 3 allied species who had lived in peace for over 2,000 years. But peace meant nothing when facing an enemy that devoured entire worlds. The screen showed what remained of the Zelthani homeworld, where once a beautiful blue planet had spun lazily through space. Now only twisted metal and cosmic dust remained. The Devourers had finished their work in less than 6 hours. How many survivors? Zara asked, her 6-fingered hands trembling slightly. Her purple skin had paled to a sickly lavender, and her large black eyes reflected the horror on the screen. General Vex Morian, a towering Myradian with crystalline scales, checked his tactical display. Perhaps 50,000 escaped in the evacuation ships. Out of 3 billion, his voice carried the weight of command, but Zara could hear the despair beneath it. The Corvani alliance had seemed so strong just months ago. 3 species working together, sharing technology and culture. The Corvani provided diplomatic expertise and advanced communications. The Zelthani contributed their mastery of energy manipulation and shield technology. The Myradians offered their incredible defensive capabilities and military tactics. Together, they controlled 12 star systems and believed they were ready for any threat. The Devourers had proven them catastrophically wrong. The ancient enemy returns. Dr. Keela Sarn, the Alliance's chief scientist, pulled up her research on the main display. Her Corvini features showed exhaustion from weeks of sleepless work. According to the ancient records, the Devourers appeared every 50,000 years. They consume all advanced technology and organic matter, then disappear back into deep space. The images were terrifying. Massive geometric ships, each the size of a moon, constructed from an unknown black material that seemed to absorb light itself. They moved with purpose, stripping planets down to their cores before moving to the next system. Smaller craft swarmed like insects, carrying the harvested materials back to the motherships. What do they want? Asked Communications Officer Jix, the youngest member of the command staff. His Zelthani energy form flickered with nervous blue light. Everything, replied General Moradin grimly. They take our technology, our resources, our people. The survivors describe being analyzed and studied before being converted into energy to power their ships. Zara studied the tactical display, showing the Devourers advance through their territory. Red zones marked dead systems. Yellow zones showed systems under attack. The green zones, representing safe territory, grew smaller each day. How long until they reach Corvex Prime? She asked. 18 standard days, Morian answered. Maybe 20 if we can slow them at the Theta Barrier. The galaxy turns away. For weeks, the Corvani Alliance had sent desperate messages across the galaxy, begging for help from the great powers. The responses had been predictably disappointing. Jix read the latest communications aloud. The hegemony of 1,000 suns sends their condolences, but states that intervention would violate their non-interference doctrine. The Collective of Minds expresses sympathy but considers the Devourer threat beyond their capabilities. The Trade Federation offers to purchase any survivors as indentured workers. The cold calculation in that last message made Zora's stomach turn. While entire civilizations died, others were already planning how to profit from the tragedy. What about the younger civilizations? She asked desperately. The Keth Republic offers 3 patrol ships. The new colonies promise medical supplies for refugees. The Spiral Union can provide temporary shelter for 10,000 evacuees. Jix's energy form dimmed with disappointment. Kind gestures, but against the Devourers. It was like offering cups of water to stop a tsunami. General Morian activated a holographic battle plan. Our combined fleets number 130 ships. Intelligence suggests the Devourers have at least 800 major vessels, plus countless smaller craft. Our weapons barely scratch their hulls, and their technology adapts to our attacks within hours. The math was simple and brutal. They would fight, and they would lose. A signal from the unknown. As the command staff discussed evacuation plans, Chicks suddenly straightened at his communications console. Energy patterns swirled faster around his form, indicating excitement or confusion. Ambassadors, I'm detecting an unusual signal. It's coming from the Outer Rim territories, somewhere in the Orion Arm. Zara frowned. The Orion Arm. That region is barely mapped. Nothing but primitive worlds and stellar debris. The signal is responding to our general distress beacon. Chicks continued, working frantically at his controls. They're trying to establish communication, but their technology is different. Very crude compared to galactic standards. Can you make contact? Asked Dr. Sarn, moving to examine the data. I think so. The signal is getting stronger. Wait. Here it comes. Static filled the command center. Then a voice emerged. It spoke in broken galactic standard, clearly struggling with the language. Hello. Is anyone there? This is Earth responding to your distress call. We received your message about hostile forces. Are you still alive? The command staff exchanged glances. None of them had heard of this Earth before. Zara stepped forward. This is Ambassador Zara Thylix of the Corvini Alliance. We are under attack by an ancient enemy called the Devourers. Our situation is critical. Billions have already died. A pause. Then, understood, Ambassador. We're analyzing your data transmission now. Jesus, that's a lot of ships they've got. Don't worry, we're coming to help. General Morian activated his communicator. Earth vessel, what is your fleet strength? Right now we have about 20 ships in the area, but our main fleet is mobilizing. Should have around 200 vessels heading your way within the week. The aliens stared at each other in shock. The number seemed impossibly small against an enemy that had consumed entire star systems. Earth vessel, Zara said carefully. Are you certain you understand the scale of this threat? The Devourers have destroyed civilizations that stood for millennia. Oh, we understand perfectly. We've been studying your tactical data for the past few hours. Fascinating stuff. Really, these Devourers have some interesting weaknesses that nobody seems to have noticed. Before anyone could ask what that meant, the transmission continued with words that would echo through galactic history. We're coming. Hold the line. First contact protocol. The communication ended, leaving the Alliance leadership staring at each other in bewilderment. They had begged the galaxy's greatest powers for help and been ignored or refused. Now some unknown species from the galactic backwater was promising rescue with just 200 ships. Dr. Sarn was already researching their databases. According to our stellar surveys, the Orion Arm contains several primitive species. Most are still confined to their home systems. I found one entry for Earth, apparently inhabited by a species called humans. They only achieved faster than light travel about 50 years ago. 50 years. General Morian's crystalline scales shifted to a darker hue, indicating skepticism. The Devourers have been consuming advanced civilizations for millions of years. What could primitives possibly do? But Zara felt something she hadn't experienced in weeks. Hope. They're the only ones who answered. Everyone else abandoned us or wants to profit from our destruction. At least these humans are willing to try. Should we evacuate the non-essential population? Jix asked. Zara looked at the tactical display showing the Devourers' relentless advance, then at the evacuation reports streaming across secondary screens. Families torn apart, children crying as they left their homes, brave pilots volunteering for hopeless missions against impossible odds. Continue the evacuations, she decided, but maintain defensive positions. If these humans really are coming, we need to buy them time to arrive. Outside the viewing ports of Corvex Prime's command center, the first refugee ships were already arriving from the outer worlds. Their hulls bore scorch marks from running battles with Devourer scouts. Soon this world too would face the ancient enemy. But somewhere in the depths of space, 200 ships from a world called Earth were coming to help. Nobody knew what humans were capable of, but they were about to find out. The waiting game. The next few days passed in a blur of military preparations and civilian evacuations. General Morion coordinated the Alliance's remaining fleets into defensive positions around key systems. Dr. Sarn worked around the clock to analyze any possible weaknesses in Devourer technology. Jix maintained constant communication with refugee convoys and monitoring stations throughout their territory. And Zara waited for word from Earth. Reports from the front lines grew more desperate each day. The Devourers had consumed the Zelthani research stations at Proxima Zelth. The Meridian fortress world of Crystalline Prime had fallen after a 3-day siege. Each loss brought the ancient enemy closer to the heart of Alliance space. Any word from the humans? Zara asked during the daily briefing. Sporadic communications, Jix replied. They seemed to be asking for detailed information about Devourer biology, attack patterns, and technological specifications. Unusual questions that nobody has asked before. What kind of questions? Dr. Sarn consulted her notes. They want to know about breeding cycles, energy consumption rates, command structure hierarchy, even the chemical composition of their hull materials. It's almost as if they're treating this as a scientific problem rather than a military crisis. General Morion found this approach puzzling. Every civilization that's encountered the Devourers treats them as a force of nature, like trying to fight a hurricane or stop a supernova. You survive if you can, but you don't try to defeat them. Maybe that's been the problem, Zara mused. Maybe nobody has ever really tried to fight back. As if summoned by her words, Jix's console lit up with an incoming transmission. Ambassador, I'm receiving a priority signal from the human fleet. Put it through. A new voice came through the speakers, confident and professional. Corvani Alliance, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force. Our advance fleet has entered your outer system. Request permission to dock at Corvex Prime for tactical briefing. Zara felt her hearts racing. After days of waiting, the humans had finally arrived. Permission granted, Admiral Chen. We'll have a docking bay prepared for your arrival. Acknowledged. Fair warning. We might look a little different from what you're expecting. See you in a few hours. The transmission ended, leaving the Alliance leadership with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. In just a few hours, they would meet the mysterious humans who had answered their desperate call when the rest of the galaxy had turned away. When humanity arrives, the strangers from Earth, the docking bay of Corvex Prime, had hosted delegations from across the galaxy, but never had Ambassador Zara felt such anticipation. She stood with the full Alliance leadership as the human shuttle approached, its design unlike anything in their databases. Where most galactic vessels featured smooth curves and energy-efficient forms, the human craft appeared almost brutally functional, angular, armored, and built for combat. Admiral Sarah Chen emerged first, her magnetic boots clicking against the deck plating. She stood roughly average height for a human, with short black hair and sharp brown eyes that seemed to catalog everything around her. Behind her came her senior staff. Captain Marcus Rodriguez, a stocky man with tactical scars across his hands. Dr. Elena Vasquez, a woman carrying an array of scanning equipment. And Engineer Tom Mitchell, whose uniform bore the stains of recent mechanical work. Admiral Chen, welcome to Corvex Prime, Zara said formally. We are grateful for your response to our distress call. Just doing what neighbors should do, Chen replied with a slight nod. Her galactic standard was perfect, though tinged with an accent none of the aliens recognized. Sorry we couldn't get here sooner. Had to make some modifications to our ships for the long journey. General Morion stepped forward, his crystalline form towering over the humans. Despite his impressive size, something about these smaller beings made him cautious. Admiral, our sensors detected only 20 vessels in your fleet. The Devourers field hundreds of ships, each capable of consuming an entire world. Captain Rodriguez looked up from the tactical tablet he was studying. That's just our advance fleet. Main battle groups are still 3 days out. We wanted to get here quickly and assess the situation firsthand. Dr. Sarn's curiosity overcame diplomatic protocol. How many ships are we discussing? Currently mobilizing about 400 vessels from the home fleet, Dr. Vasquez replied, consulting her own data, plus colonial defense forces and allied contingents. Should be around 800 ships total once everyone arrives. The aliens exchanged stunned glances. 800 ships was more than 4 times their combined fleets. The idea that this unknown species could field such numbers seemed impossible. That's assuming we need them all, added Admiral Chen. Let's see what we're really dealing with first. A different perspective. They moved to the main briefing room, where holographic displays showed the Devourer's current positions. The massive geometric ships moved through space with terrifying purpose, their black hulls absorbing light and energy from surrounding space. The Devourers have existed for millions of years, explained Dr. Sarn. Ancient records suggest they've consumed entire galactic sectors. They're considered a force of nature, like black holes or stellar collapse. Interesting perspective, Admiral Chen said, studying the tactical data with bright eyes. But they're obviously artificial constructs, which means they follow engineering principles. Everything built has weaknesses. Dr. Vasquez was already taking notes on her tablet. These consumption cycles you mentioned, how long between major appearances, and what's their primary resource acquisition pattern? The question caught the Alliance leaders off guard. In all their centuries of recorded encounters with the Devourers, no one had thought to study them like engineering problems. Well, they consume all forms of matter and energy, stammered General Morian. Organic compounds, refined metals, even stellar plasma. But we never investigated their specific preferences. They also take prisoners, added Jix nervously. Survivors report being studied and analyzed before being converted into energy. Captain Rodriguez looked up from his analysis of Devourer ship footage. These larger vessels, they appear to be command units. See how the smaller craft cluster around them in protective formations. Classic hierarchical behavior. Eliminate the command structure, and the subordinate units become significantly less effective. You're talking about fighting them, General Morian said, his scales shifting to alarmed colors. They've destroyed civilizations that existed when my species was still learning to use tools. The hegemony of 1,000 suns avoids them entirely. Engineer Mitchell smiled, and there was something unsettling about that expression. Not cruel, but determined in a way that made the aliens uncomfortable. Then we know where to find them. Questions nobody asked. The humans began asking questions that no one had considered before. How fast could the Devourers accelerate? What was their maximum operational range between resource acquisitions? Did they show preferences for certain types of star systems? Could their hull materials be damaged by extreme temperature variations? Your species approaches this very differently than others, observed Dr. Sarn, her exhaustion momentarily forgotten. Most problems have solutions if you look at them the right way, replied Engineer Mitchell, studying structural scans of captured Devourer fragments. These things are built rather than evolved, so they probably have design limitations, stress points where components interface. The neural networks fascinate me, added Dr. Vasquez, highlighting brain-like structures within the ships. If they're truly operating as a collective intelligence, there should be communication pathways we can disrupt. The Alliance leadership watched in amazement as the humans dissected the Devourer threat like a puzzle to be solved rather than a natural disaster to be endured. They requested biological samples, energy pattern analyses, behavioral studies, and detailed breakdowns of attack formations that the Alliance had never bothered to document properly. We need to understand their reproduction methodology, Admiral Chen said, studying recordings of Devourers releasing smaller craft. Do they manufacture continuously, or in cycles? Are there resource bottlenecks we can exploit? This is remarkable, whispered General Morian to Zora. They're treating this as a military problem with a tactical solution. Is that not how your species would approach it? Asked Captain Rodriguez. We've always treated the Devourers as we would a plague or stellar disaster, Zara explained. Something to survive rather than defeat. The humans exchanged glances that spoke volumes. Admiral Chen leaned back in her chair, processing everything they'd learned. So, for millions of years, every species that encountered these things just ran away or tried to hide until they passed. That's been the standard response, yes. Has anyone ever tried to fight back? Really fight back, not just defensive actions? The question hung in the air like a challenge. The truth was that most civilizations considered the Devourers an unstoppable force of nature, like trying to fight gravity or nuclear fusion. The Keth Empire attempted a military response about 1,000 years ago, recalled Dr. Sarn. They lost their entire battle fleet in less than 2 hours. What was their strategy? Asked Rodriguez. Standard defensive formations. They tried to protect their homeworld with orbital platforms and concentrated firepower. Defensive. Admiral Chen repeated thoughtfully. What about offensive operations? Deep strikes against their manufacturing centers. Disruption of their resource supply lines. Targeted elimination of command structures. The aliens looked uncomfortable at the suggestions. Such tactics were considered extreme by most galactic civilizations, something only primitive species would contemplate. Admiral, Zara said carefully, you're discussing strategies that most civilizations would consider unethical. We're discussing strategies that work, Chen replied firmly. Sometimes you have to be willing to do what others won't in order to protect what matters. The plan nobody expected. Over the next several hours, the humans completely restructured how the Alliance understood their enemy. Dr. Vasquez identified critical communication nodes within the Devourer ships. Engineer Mitchell discovered that their hull materials became brittle at extremely high temperatures. Captain Rodriguez developed targeting priorities that focused on command vessels rather than the larger but less important construction ships. Most importantly, Admiral Chen revealed that Earth's fleet wasn't built for traditional space combat. Our ships are designed for asymmetric warfare, she explained, calling up technical specifications that made the aliens' eyes widen. We learned early that we'd never match the raw firepower of established galactic civilizations, so we focused on speed, stealth, and precision strikes. The human vessels were indeed smaller than traditional warships, but they mounted experimental weapons systems that pushed the boundaries of known physics. Quantum torpedoes that phased through conventional shields. Plasma cannons that could reach temperatures rivaling stellar cores. Electronic warfare suites designed to infiltrate and corrupt enemy computer systems. The Devourers have never faced opponents like us, Rodriguez noted with satisfaction. They've adapted to counter traditional galactic military doctrine. But our tactics come from a completely different evolutionary path. You're going to attack them directly, General Morian said, still struggling to process the concept. We're going to eliminate them, corrected Admiral Chen. The age of running and hiding ends now. Outside the briefing room windows, the first elements of the main human fleet were already arriving. Unlike the sleek vessels common in galactic civilization, these ships looked like instruments of war, angular, bristling with weapons, built by a species that had learned to fight for everything they achieved. As the Alliance leadership watched, more human ships dropped out of hyperspace. Cruisers, destroyers, carrier vessels, and craft of designs they didn't recognize. Each one bore the scars of combat and the modifications of a species that refused to accept defeat. How long until you're ready to engage? Asked Zora. Admiral Chen consulted with her staff, then smiled with the confidence of someone who had never met an impossible problem. Give us 24 hours to finish positioning our forces. Then we'll show the galaxy what happens when you threaten humanity's friends. The Devourers had consumed civilizations for millions of years, but they had never encountered humans before. They were about to discover that some species didn't know when to quit. As the human fleet moved into position around Corvex Prime, a single thought echoed through the minds of every Alliance member watching. Perhaps for the first time in galactic history, the hunters were about to become the hunted. The battle for the survival of the Alliance was about to begin, and humanity had brought weapons the ancient enemy had never seen before.